ज्वाइन तो हो आप?
हाँ हो गया, अब आ गया। ठीक है,
ठीक है, मैं आपको होस्ट बना रहा
थैंक यू
हूँ।
नितिन। ठीक है ओके।
को बनाया सर या एसएस रावत को बनाना है? आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है, म्यूट पे हो आप।
हाँ आशीष वाले को बना दो।
एसएस रावत को?
हाँ।
ठीक है।
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, sir. Rawat sir.
Good.
Hello.
Yeah,
Good morning.
I can hear you, Guruvata.
You can hear me. Yeah,
Yes.
just to inform you that I have told one of my students also to join if he has time.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, sir. No,
Just permit him if he joins. Sai Krishna is the name of the person.
okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. हाँ करते हैं. Yes, कर दिया.
Good morning, Guruvata. कोई है ही नहीं लगता है. We are the only two people.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
I think meeting is supposed to start at 10:30.
10:30. Yes.
Good morning, Verma ji.
Good.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Rakesh.
Verma ji.
Good morning. Good morning, Rakesh Haji.
Morning ji. Good morning. Good morning, Soni. How are you?
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar, everyone, sir.
Chintan Shaji. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Nakul, you are also there.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Balwant. Good morning, Grover Saab.
Good morning, Soni sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Singh Saab.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning, Christian. Good morning, Ji. Good morning.
सिंह साहब आप इंडिया में हैं या बाहर हैं?
Background, what's on it?
ओके.
तो एकदम जुकाम से हालत खराब है.
ये आपने कोट वोट नहीं पहन रखा ना, इसलिए मैंने कहा कि बाहर.
और सर घर के अंदर चल जाता है. सोनी, बलवंत, जोशी सब लोग बैकग्राउंड एक साथ लेके आएगा. सोनी भी वही है जहाँ बीपी सिंह है.
सर आपकी आवाज कट रही है. Am I audible? Problem is at my end or at your end?
या बलवंत, वी कैन हियर यू.
Okay, thanks. I think वर्मा साहब के यहाँ से कुछ इशू था, वो आवाज उनकी कट रही थी.
शायद क्या कर रही है साहब. अभी इज इट क्लियर नाउ? हाँ जी, अभी ठीक है आपका. ओके. पुलिस साहब तो कहीं ट्रैवल कर रहे हैं.
Good morning, sir.
गुड मॉर्निंग कुलजीत जी. गुड मॉर्निंग.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Dr. Grover. Good morning, ji.
Good morning,
Chintan.
Bobby sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Verma sir. Good morning, Soni ji.
गुड मॉर्निंग.
DP Singh sir.
गुड मॉर्निंग.
Namaskar.
Good morning, sir.
Sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, ji.
सत श्री अकाल सर.
Sat Shri Akal ji. Sat Shri Akal, Chintan.
गुड मॉर्निंग शाही साहब.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
गुड
Good
मॉर्निंग.
Good
morning.
morning, ji.
Good
Good morning.
morning.
मॉर्निंग सर. आप म्यूटेड है सर. शाही साहब म्यूटेड है. अनम्यूट. प्लीज अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ.
साहिल साहब अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर लीजिए.
गुड मॉर्निंग आरपी सिंह साहब.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ji. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. शाही सर आप अभी भी अनम्यूट कीजिए, वी कांट हियर यू.
Good morning, Ghanshyam ji.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Jay. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ghanshyam. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Am I on mute? No.
No, sir, we can hear you, Ghanshyam sir.
Mr. Shahi is on mute.
He's on mute.
शाही साहब आप म्यूट पे हैं.
वो रिमोट से अनम्यूट कर सकता है.
I think he's trying to unmute himself.
सर वो वेबएक्स वाला अनम्यूट है, आपके टेलीफोन सिस्टम वाला स्पीकर का अनम्यूट नहीं है.
Problem.
हो गया ठीक.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. We use it.
Okay.
Morning, Alok Kumar ji.
Hello.
morning.
please come.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Now, Ghanshyam has also come. Good morning, Ghanshyam.
भाई साहब का आवाज नहीं आ रहा है.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Ghanshyam, you do now. Okay.
भाई साहब का वॉल्यूम ऑफ है. अनम्यूट हो गया लेकिन वॉल्यूम बहुत लो है.
Shall we begin?
I think so. Rakesh ji, आप शुरू करिए.
Shahi साहब, shall we begin?
We can start. Yeah. All the senior people, speakers, all have come. Let's start.
Some more people might join because it's a winter day. People start joining after 10:30. So I'll begin. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the resource adequacy planning and its implementation by the distribution licensees. I have already circulated a background note giving the provisions of the rules and the guidelines, and I am not going to repeat that. Basically, resource adequacy planning involves demand projections, identifying the various generation resources required to meet the demand reliably at all times, keeping in view the decarbonization or RPO targets, and the requirement of flexible resources to accommodate the penetration of variable RE sources. And number 3, planning associated transmission and distribution system to ensure delivery of power to the end consumer. With the increasing component of the variable RE, the resource adequacy planning has become very complex and requires expert manpower and requisite tools for carrying out the planning and its implementation. According to the National Electricity Plan, the generation capacity is required to be doubled to 875 gigawatt, along with storage capacity of 77 gigawatt for 5 hours of storage by FY 2032. And according to an indicative study for FY 47, the generation capacities of more than 2000 gigawatt is required, along with storage capacity of 475 gigawatt for 5 to 6 hours of storage to meet the projected demand of the country. Even with such huge capacity, we may not be reaching close to the current per capita consumption of China, which is presently 5,000 kilowatt hour per capita. Meeting these capacity addition targets will require addition of generation capacity of 54 gigawatt per annum from FY24 to FY32 and 78 gigawatt per annum from FY32 to 47, as against maximum that we have achieved 20 gigawatt per annum. Besides this additional capacity, huge storage capacity is also required to be developed, and a lot of old capacity will be retiring, so replacement capacity is also required to be developed. How do we prepare ourselves to meet the future requirements of the country, keeping in view our decarbonization targets, is what we are going to discuss in today's webinar. Some of the issues are the capacity building of DISCOMs and SLDC level for short-term and long-term demand forecasting and resource adequacy planning. Now, weather extremes impact demand a lot. And in addition, solar and wind generation is also affected by the vagaries of weather. Now, over the years, we are finding a lot of uncertainty in the weather, and each month is very typical, different from what we experienced in the previous month. So sometimes the past data, weather data, or past demand data is not what we are going to, is not going to help us in assessing the demand for the coming months. So it has become very difficult because of the weather extremes, planning of the demand and resource adequacy. And planning of thermal maintenance also is affected whenever there is a extreme weather conditions, which is not expected and which is different from the averages. So a lot of consumers are also migrating to suppliers other than DISCOM. We have large data centers, commercial centers, industries shifting to, who are connected to intrastate system, and they are shifting to the other suppliers for part of their demand. So for demand forecasting of these state DISCOMs, such demands, variation in demand is also to be accounted for, which is a challenge. In addition to that, large consumers are also getting connected to ISTS system. For example, RIL, BALCO, and some data centers, large data center in future will also get connected. And green hydrogen electrolyzer, which each one having more than 100 megawatt load may come, and they also get connected to ISTS. These consumers do not form of the resource adequacy planning of the DISCOM. So these consumers should be mandated to demonstrate their demand adequacy, resource adequacy, before they are connected to the interstate system, so that the burden does not come on the system and not the DISCOM. Now, how the projected capacity will be built? The CA has done the resource adequacy planning studies for most of the states, and huge capacity is to be tied up by the DISCOM every year. They have given year-wise requirement. Now, enhancing indigenous manufacturing capacity, other supply chain issues, adequate vendor availability, and above all, floating of adequate tenders by the DISCOMs and signing of PPAs by DISCOM. I think that is something which is very essential. And any delay in signing of PPA by DISCOM puts a brake on the capacity addition speed. Now, a lot of fixed duration RE contracts are being signed by DISCOMs. And it is not clear in such FDRE contracts how much solar, wind, or storage capacity will be added because these contracts are for 4 to 17 hours duration. And the longer the duration of contract, the more is the inflexibility. So I personally feel that separate wind, solar, and storage contracts tied up by DISCOM will provide more flexibility rather than going for FDRE contracts. Now, VRE capacity planned for financial year 32 is 55% of the total installed capacity, and it is expected to be 80% of the total installed capacity in FY47. So storage is going to play a very important role. And presently we are lagging behind in the storage. So we have to plan strategies how to expedite the storage capacity. The future of coal-based plants is also to be considered. FY 32 and 47, particularly between FY 32 47. In FY 47, the capacity is going lower, absolute capacity going lower than what it is in FY 32. But a lot of old capacity will be attaining the age of 45 to 50 years and maybe retiring. So such replacement capacity is also to be planned. And a clear indication is to be given to the suppliers, manufacturers, vendors, so that they remain prepared for the capacity addition. Now, NLDC, RLDC may be able to see the shortages in the coming months, and they can give an alert to the consumers to conserve energy. But such alerts politically may not be acceptable because of the political reasons that it will be considered that the state could not procure adequate power and make adequate arrangements. But I think such alerts are required, and demand response is also required, because they will be very useful in such extreme weather conditions. And it will be better to give such alerts to consumers to control their demand rather than doing the unscheduled load sheddings. Now, these are a few issues I wanted to flag along with what I've given in the paper. So today we have 4 distinguished speakers: Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Chairperson CEA; Mr. R.P. Singh, former Chairperson UP State Regulatory Commission; Mr. Chintan Shah, Group President, Renew Power and former Director, IREDA; and Mr. Balwant Joshi, Founder and MD, IDAM Infrastructure Advisory Limited. I'm extremely grateful to all of you for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time. May I now request Mr. R.V. Shahi, our President, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Rakesh, and all the distinguished speakers and participants. We have a good number, almost 50. And the subject is so important that it needs to be really deliberated at length. I'm not aware under what background these rules were framed in 2022. And then subsequently, the guidelines were also structured and circulated. And then on that basis, certain exercise has been done by CEA on projecting the short, medium, and long-term demand. See, the objective of the Electricity Act and policies that followed have been quite clear that slowly and slowly we are opening up the sector. It is a different matter that we couldn't do much on distribution, and it is not that Act is not enabling us to do what we need to do. But it is a part reform of the sector, and part reform of the sector lies in the executives to follow. Act is not standing in the way. A centralized planning is important, no doubt, but it has to be in tune with, in sync with the overall structure that we are trying to create and evolve and develop over a period of time. Some of the points, Rakesh, you have made, that implementability of the rules and guidelines, to the extent that this responsibility is being entrusted to the distribution companies, go counter to the structure that we are anticipating in the future. What we are anticipating? There could be large organizations, factories, they can set up their own power plant, and there will be a mechanism by which they will seek the transmission access, and that will follow a very structured commercial arrangement. It could be short term, it could be medium term, it could be long term. If somebody is setting up data center and the data center has to come in 3 years' time, he has to approach how he accesses power, from where he accesses power. So those policies are in place. So obviously, that type of demand would not be so clearly anticipated by the distribution companies, all the load dispatch center. They will know it. They will be in the loop, no doubt about it, but as a future, they will not know it. Then we have allowed captive power generation. We have allowed group captive power generation. We are going in a big way on decentralized distributed generation. Rural electrification policy, which is a statutory document, has allowed that 1 megawatt and below, and it could be more, I have suggested it should be amended, can be decentralized distributed generation. It will not need generation, transmission, distribution license. It could be totally license free. So the structure and the anticipation in the Electricity Act and the policy that followed leaves no doubt some room for distribution companies to do what we are wanting them to do under this dispensation, and load dispatch center to be part of that process. But if we think that that would be the source by which we can anticipate future projection, that would be somewhat difficult because of these reasons. And it might go counter to what we are wanting the structure to evolve to. The structure of power sector is not going to evolve through only the distribution licensees, the way they are. It will be so many other players, and they will have a role, but anticipating 5-year, 10-year, 15-year would not be there. This is one major point that I wish to make. Second major point that I wish to make, that you see, we have been, and partly I had little time, but I took advantage, and thanks to Chairman CEA, gave me an opportunity to address this Golden Jubilee event for Central Electricity Authority, and I did say that we are far away. Practically, we have done nothing. And I gave an example of China, that in 1990, we and China were together at par in per capita income, also more or less on per capita electricity consumption. And it has been established beyond doubt now that per capita income, per capita electricity consumption, they are highly and closely correlated. And I said, with all apology, I said, though I am not the one who is responsible, nor the one who can take that sort of a thing that, yes, we could have made a difference. But at the same time, being part of this process for more than 50 years, we did say that power sector has been the reason for India not growing, absolutely not growing. We are 129th among 200 nations on per capita income. And per capita income, as I said, is very much dependent on how much of electricity you are going to provide. So sometimes when I see the comments on some of our friends on various WhatsApp groups, we say, where will the demand be? Demand will be there. We have to have the policies which will create demand. We will have to have large industrial setups that will create demand. And then only we can export outside. We can't export. We have our own consumption. It can be a consumption-based growth of the country. It can be export-oriented growth of the country. So therefore, and I made a point in that seminar, that is a very important event that I was attending, and I said I'm thankful to Ghanshyam, that even in 2047, we do not wish to be at par with what China is today in per capita consumption of electricity, in the projection that we are talking. So if you look at these things, then this fine-tuning of projection of demand, etc., has a value. But this value has to be seen in a contextual manner. I am not saying that this type of task given to distribution company or XYZ does not have meaning. It has a lot of meaning. But since we have to go a long way, when we did 100,000 megawatt thermal initiative in 2003, 50,000 megawatt hydroelectric initiative in 2000, 3, 4, and Central Electricity Authority was the main force behind that. When our Ministry of Power, we announced that document with the Prime Minister inaugurating that. I mean, the idea was that it is not that we are trying to see where is the demand and where the demand will follow. And really, I have followed all my career in power sector, that to make power available, demand will be there. There may be a gap. So therefore, the concern like this, that where power will be there, where will the demand, I am not one who is very much comfortable about that. So, therefore, there are difficulties. The requirement is genuine. We are uneasy about this. We should be more systematic. This is all true. But to what extent on these lines that we are suggesting, this objective can be met, will have to be revisited. So that's a major issue that we need to discuss. And I would again earnestly say that let us interact with various industries and various industry and economic ministries of the country. All of them have their planning divisions, all of them their thoughts. Steel industry may be an expansion plan. Industry department of Ministry of Industry and Development may be having a plan. Fertilizer will be having a plan. Others will be having a plan. We need to discuss with large manufacturers, large industrial corporates of the country. They have a plan for next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They are the people who have to tell us what is the demand like. But more importantly even than that is how the policy of the government will guide the growth of economy. If we have to have a growth of economy of the order of 6 to 7%, I have done some work. I have put one piece as part 1 in the last issue of the total. The second piece will be this month, I will supplement, will very much cover this issue, that one needs to be concerned that you grow at a rate. And I have said that if we have to be at par with, though example or comparison with China is not comfortable, it's not comfortable for me as well. But at the same time, if somebody has done a job over the last 30, 40 years of a comparable size of population, of a comparable size of the country, and a comparable size of the demand and concerns, this is something to learn. And therefore, that article will cover the other aspects of how to go about it. In that, how do we address the resource adequacy issue? The objective is very laudable. The process and the modality and the entrustment of responsibilities, those are the issues which will need to be discussed. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shai Saab. May I now request Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad.
Good morning, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me this opportunity once again to be before the forum and to express the views of on a very, very important topic of resource adequacy planning, and most important, its implementation. साई साहब ने बहुत अच्छा कहा सर अभी कि इसका बैकग्राउंड जानना चाहते थे कि ये बैकग्राउंड किस what initiated since I was in ministry, so I can slightly say on that particular aspect because I had seen both the phases. One phase was when the country was running into deficit and we were after the capacity addition. That is from where we started. That was an era somewhere around 2007-8 to somewhere around 2011 or 2016-17. That was the era when we added huge amount of capacity. In particular, the coal-based capacity, which and the growth rate was somewhere around more than 10%, some touching up to even 13 to 14% as well. So far, so good, sir. And we have been able to curtail that shortages from as high as 13 to 14% to less than 1% at present, or even for the last 3-4 years. But what happened during this period was some kind of a disaster, which led to stress condition in the entire power sector. Lot of capacity got stressed and stranded, and that capacity was huge, somewhere around 60 to 70 gigawatt of capacity, which was coming during the last 3 years of that endeavor, really got stressed. And then there was HLC, and then all committees, everybody, all the stakeholders, all the important machineries of the government started thinking about how do we resolve these particular issues. It took something like 5 to 6 years for us to now almost liquidate that kind of a problem, and we have been able to resolve that particular issue. And at present, hardly any such plant is there which is yet to be resolved, particularly those which are willing to get the resolution done. Second, what happened is that means the moment we touched from deficit was one problem. The moment we pushed ourselves to a surplus situation, the situation changed and we were not able to, we had to encounter slightly a different strategy and different problems. So the very important part that comes now is learning from these two exercises. We thought that why don't we really balance the two? Maybe it will never get exactly balanced, but very close to that balance, that whatever we require, we should try to get to that level itself. How do we do that? So far, we were not having any kind of a mechanism which assessed resource adequacy. What we used to do in CA also is we used to have national electricity plans, which used to be revised every 5 years, and much things used to happen during that particular 5 years, which was not being dynamically captured and course correction taken at the right time when it was supposed to be taken. So this led us to a thinking that why don't everybody in the entire value chain, starting from the DISCOMs and the national level, all of the entire chain must do this particular exercise. And this exercise has to be done from 1 day to 1 year, maybe periodically, which the work that has been assigned to the load dispatch centers as of now, whether it is state load dispatch centers or regional or the national load dispatch centers. And then there has to be a longer time horizon which needs to be given to the load serving entities or the DISCOMs. And this was for a 10 years time horizon, and particularly in a context that whatever type of resources that is required, whether it is coal or nuclear or hydro pump storage, any kind of situation, and particularly if I see from the nuclear perspective, it takes around 7 years, 8 years, 9 years time to get those facilities built. So that is how the horizon of 10 years was fixed. Then the question came, what should that periodicity be? Should we wait for 5 years to get it revised, or do a midterm course correction somewhere around 2.5 years or 3 years? Probably we thought in the context of renewables, solar, wind, etc., we need to be as fast as possible. So we decided, okay, why not let us have it at least on annual basis, and that is how it has been mandated now, that every year that course correction has to be done. So the plan becomes dynamic now. Whatever we did, whatever we planned, whether we achieved, did not achieve, whatever the load that was forecasted, whether it has been met or slightly higher on that aspect. So all these needs to be factored in, and again, exercise be done and go to the regulatory commission and get it approved in advance, so that you are able to tie up these capacities as well. So coming to the implementation part, sir, this is how we have thought about it. And since I think a point that was also raised about the capacity building, we were fully aware that the job which is being assigned to the DISCOMs, they don't have the capacity as of now. So we took that challenge and we said, okay, we will do this exercise initially for everybody, and we will not do it alone. It has to be done with them. So we did all these exercises which is being carried out is along with the DISCOMs. DISCOMs officers come, they sit in CA, or CA team goes to the distribution companies. Both of them sit together and try to do this particular exercise jointly, so that after 2 or 3 iterations, the entire exercise can be taken over by them. CA will not continue for further. Once they start doing it, they can revise it even slightly more frequent manners, maybe in 6 months' time also. Then what happens is we need to optimize at the national level. So all these results must come to CA, and CA will do that national study which has been mandated to them, and these studies will give them the benefits of the diversity factors and all other optimization solutions which needs to be factored in, and these also needs to be passed on to back to the DISCOM, so that we also optimize on that capacity. As far as the diversity factor side right now is concerned, we are gaining somewhere around 25 to 25,000 megawatt, which needs again goes back to in the planning process and must be factored in, so that we don't build the overcapacity in the entire system. So again, coming back to the exercise of the scientific nature which is required to be done, what we saw is the challenge is now more severe, particularly with respect to the solar wind which is getting added into the system, and because of its variability. So we had to come out with another guidelines, which is right now on a draft stage. I think all of us must have seen that, and that's the how do we really give credit, that capacity credit, to these resources, because we all are aware that solar will not be available other than the day hours. Even wind is not available during 7 to 8 months in a year. Even during each day, there are huge amount of variations. How do we take care of these parameters? Arriving at simple one number is one way, or we do a profiling of these. So ultimately, we will be going for profiling of these resource adequacy plans as well, which will give us at least visibility throughout the year, throughout that period, and in a particular profile. So this is another future plans that that we have, so that we do these exercise to a larger granularity as well. So coming back to the is correlation with weather, because this is another challenge that all of us are facing, particularly the planning models are facing with respect to the weather forecasting. And right now, particularly, even though we are able to factor in the short term modeling and in a day ahead or a week ahead forecast, but not very clearly in terms of the forecast which is required for the long term. So we are in discussion with our own IMD so that we are able to get some data on that. Very soon we will have a memorandum of understanding with the MOU signing with the IMD, so that we are able to get this seamless flow of these information, particularly the past data, based on we are trying to build up that model, and so that we will be able to do it on the econometric basis as well. Right now, sir, there is the challenge that comes to the solar and wind in terms of weather is the cycle that is there with them is roughly around 12 hours. That means each model is getting updated at the best is 12-hour frequency, which means that whatever happens within this 12 hours, nothing is known. And that is how the developers, they face a huge amount of challenge in terms of accuracy in forecasting. We had a discussion with them, and they will be now doing it on a 4-hourly basis initially from 1st of April 2025, and then going for the hourly basis of forecast. So this forecasting area is again one of the bigger challenge in terms of the granularity of the accuracy of the resource adequacy plan that is required to be done, particularly by the load dispatch centers. Whether it is SLDC, RLDC, or NLDC, the moment I say from 1 day to 1 year, these data will become very, very crucial. And if I have to really meet those kind of demand. So definitely, I think Sai Sir again highlighted today about the per capita consumptions. We are definitely far behind whatever we had been targeting. But definitely, we'll try to see that the load which is being projected, we are able to meet that kind of load. One of the bigger challenge that comes, I think that the answer was lying in the remark itself, that industries, we are not able to push these industries, and one of the major reasons, sir, is not lying from the resource adequacy side, but definitely from the structure of the tariffs that we have in the country. Probably the industrial tariff, which is very, very high, cross subsidies, all these perpetually, I mean, all the legacies issues, which is still there in the power sector, which we need to quickly tackle it. Unless we do that, probably the faster pace of industrialization may or may not happen. The demand side, definitely the challenges are there, sir. And so far, the practice used to be that we used to take inputs only from the DISCOMs and forecast the demands. But now the slightly scenario has changed. The teams are also interacting with the industries so that we get the perspective of industries. If something new or something different areas is getting developed, some other new industries, particularly say EVs, hydrogen, green hydrogen, data centers, etc., is coming on. Those are also being captured. And also from the commercial perspective, the urbanization part, urban development departments, etc., we are trying to. I mean, the idea that I wanted to just express in short is we need to take all these stakeholders along so that at least we are able to do these forecasting in a better manner. So coming to the once we have the plan now, how do we really ensure that that these people or the DISCOMs are able to tie up these capacity and they go as per these plans? So for that, of course, review has started from the ministry side, definitely, and the CA side. We have started that kind of a review, and we are trying to see. But the major challenge or major organization which should be responsible for ensuring this is the Regulatory Commission, and that's the State Commission, which has already been mandated that each plan needs to be approved, and this will be the first year wherein they will be required to approve these resource adequacy plans, and from the next year they should be able to enforce the implementation part as well, because the cycle has been completed and all the DISCOMs plan up to 32 has already been given to the DISCOMs to be presented before the State Commission, and around 18 states the plan has also been updated for 34-35 period. Some states who submitted the data a bit late, their plans also will be ready by December. So we are expecting that all the DISCOMs, they go to the Regulatory Commission this year. Of course, 30th November today is the last date for as officially for filing the ARRs. So these DISCOMs must go to the Regulatory Commission now and file their resource adequacy plan, get it approved, and at least if not 34-35, at least 32 is there with everybody now, and even 34-35 time frame, 18 states do have that plan ready with them as of now. So the idea is now that they go, they demonstrate, the tie-up is there, and tie-up must be respected from the both sides. It will be now very, very important from the perspective of the State Commission, because this also is seen many a times that the State Commission take a different view when the moment the DISCOMs, because of the uncertainty in demand, say suddenly high demand comes in, and if he has to tie up a costlier power, it is being disallowed by the State Commissions, which probably will be is proving to be a deterrent for these distribution companies to really supply quality power to the customers. And this we have seen even the last year, when the demand suddenly rose even more than 10%. lot of load shedding had started happening, because even though the power was available in the high price dam, or even the gas power were available, these DISCOMs were not allowed to tie up these powers bilaterally, and that is how we had to face this kind of a situation. So my another request is that the State Commission must become proactive, even though there are days, a few days in a year, maybe 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, or 25 days, wherein if the DISCOMs are required to purchase higher cost power which is available into the system, I think they must do it. I think at least India, we have already capped the prices, so it will not go as hay and wire as the European markets or the Western market goes. But at least these kind of tariff which caps which have already been allowed by the Commission, to that extent, the Regulatory Commission must allow these distribution companies to tie up these power and supply electricity. So idea entirely is the objective wise, sir, is that everything must be done in a holistic manner. All these stakeholders are definitely responsible, and I am sure that with these construct and all the stakeholders' participation, probably we will be able to manage the entire show, planning, implementation, and further refinement, because we are under learning phase. This is only the second cycle which has started now. And as I mentioned to you, there are certain more plans that we would like to factor in, which will really take care of. In fact, recently we had also come out with complementarity index, which we are not bringing it earlier. Now we have very clearly indicated in that matrix that which states is having a complementarity of demand, and what are the potential states where a particular states can have tie-up from the same capacity. Say, for example, MP vis-a-vis Punjab, they have a complementarity of demand, the same capacity for a period when MP can tie up, and the other times of the year, the Punjab can tie up. So these things also we have indicated in the resource adequacy plan when we came out with the national perspective as well. So I think lot of much is required to be done, sir. I think with the guidance of this forum and with the guidance of all the stakeholders, suggestions coming out from the all stakeholders, sir, probably we will be able to further refine it and further do it better, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ghanshyamji. And we are very happy to note that the resource adequacy plans that are being prepared by CEA are being made in close coordination with the state DISCOM. May I now request Mr. R.P. Singh, former chairperson, UP State Electricity Board, Regulatory Commission, sorry, UP State Electricity Regulatory Commission, to please address.
Thank you. At the outset, I'd like to express my thanks to Forum for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this very pertinent topic. I must also compliment the CEA and its chairman for taking such a leadership role and introducing resource adequacy in the power sector, and also for organizing a brainstorming session on power scenario for 2047 Viksit Bharat. As we all move in our journey for energy transition to a Viksit Bharat, the grid has to do the heavy lifting, as it is expected that the share of grid in India's energy will rise from currently around 20% to almost around 50% next couple of decades. And this growth is not only because of the power sector development, but also due to the sectoral coupling of mobility and the industry, especially the hard-to-abate one. I foresee the current structure needing substantial changes, including the Act under which we are operating. The Act has given substantial contribution to the growth of power sector, but now there is a high time need to restructure it. I agree with what Mr. Sahi has pointed out. The relationship between the economic growth and electricity consumption is having a bidirectional causality. That means both reinforce each other. And in this context, the resource adequacy planning becomes very, very relevant. While evaluating resource adequacy, it is not only necessary to consider the available resource types or the technology, but also their long-term sustainability in terms of land, water, environment, socio-economic impact, their human development indices, quality of land, quality of life, and of course, the national commitment to the international forum. To highlight my comments, I'll be using a PowerPoint with the data which has been provided in the background note. And while the background note actually captures most of the points, but I have tried to add some new points for consideration of this. So I'm just trying to open, kindly confirm you are able to see this PowerPoint.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So first is the sustainability point. We are trying to see how our energy portfolio is going to be a sustainable one, and that we must know which source is giving us the better return in terms of land, because we have plenty of land, we have plenty of sunshine, we have plenty of coal, but very limited land. So there are competing demand with other energy sources, while nuclear turns out to be the most efficient one in the land basis, but somehow our share in the nuclear is not that much. That means we'll have high pressure on the land for meeting our energy resources. The second is the emission wise, we have to see which is more efficient one. Unfortunately, coal, on which we have been relying, is the most polluting one, and the nuclear again is the clear winner because it is the least polluting one. But we have taken a path of renewables, rather variable renewables, VRE, and how it shapes that we'll discuss later. Now coming to the cost of power, how it is going to come up, we have to consider what are the different options available before us, and in that context, I'm quoting this Lazard's levelized cost of electricity in dollars per megawatt. It is not available for India, but it is available for US and other countries. So we can see still coal works out to be the cheapest one as a RTC basis. It's only about $168 per megawatt hour in comparison to the solar utility scale solar plus storage, which is 210. Of course, these figures will undergo a bit change because their coal is of higher calorific value and ours is lower. So all these changes will there, but this gives us a relative cost-wise structure. And next is the resource penetration, how we are shaping up our resources over the years. So currently, we see that the share of nuclear will be marginally going up in 2047. Coal will be drastically coming down by almost 80%. Currently, it is about 49%. It is expected to go down to 11%. Gas is going to reduce by 90%. Almost 5.7% is the share in capacity, which will come down to almost 0.5%. And the major increase is expected in the wind and solar sources. Wind will become double to 21 and solar will become 58% of the capacity. In terms of storage, this is the share. So the VRE share in capacity is 79%, almost 80% share in terms of capacity is for 2047 will be the VRE. We are getting confused. Renewable energy and VRE not the same. It is only solar wind. That means we'll have more variability. And the inertial share is coming down to 20%. It will have serious impact on our grid stability in terms of, how we are going to balance it, what are the instruments we are going to use, and all those things. So we have to take note of this. And this is the pictorial depiction of what I just mentioned, that coal share coming down, solar and wind going up. And this is again the pictorial depiction of share of VRE and inertial share. VRE going up and inertial share coming down. What is the optimal storage which is required for low VRE scenario? Normally BES is preferred for short duration, and for high VRE scenario, pump storage is more preferred because it gives you long duration. However, maybe because of the geological constraint and otherwise, our pump storage is only limited to 5.68 in 2047. Now comes the electricity generation aspect where the energy will be provided. Again, the share of different sources of energy, nuclear, while it will be going up to 6.76%, which is good. Coal will be coming down from 3.4 to less than around 18%. And wind and solar will gain, wind will gain almost 4.5 times and solar will almost 7 times. 7 times it will increase. The VRE share has been projected to be kept at 65% in this 4582 billion units projected to be generated in 2047. So these figures, why I am using, because that will give us the seriousness or the complexity which is likely to arise in future and whether the current instruments which we are using, current set of laws and rules and regulation, whether they are going to help us or not. This is again a pictorial depiction of VRE share in generation. Now, when we are talking about variability and whatever capacity we plan, we have to be also mindful that it is not constant. Forget about day, even during the month-wise, it is not constant. I'm using the data of month-wise solar generation. This data has been taken from CE only. We can see that in the month of November, the solar generation last year was 7.8 billion unit, and in the month of March, these are the highest and lowest. So when you plan, even if you take a capacity contribution, you are taking flat for a whole year. So this aspect is not captured in that capacity credit method, perhaps. So we have to think whether the capacity credit method is going to work for a high VRE scenario or not. Variability in wind is almost double the solar variability. This is again figure of month-wise generation taken from CEA for 23-24. Only 5 months we have got some stable wind generation. Rest 7 months, the wind generation is very, very less. And the highest lowest ratio is almost 1:3, or 1:4 rather. So this type of variation is on month to month. And capacity credit, whether it is going to address or not, forget about resource penetration method. So this is again a summary of what is going to be share energy and capacity. Now, how does this impact the levelized cost of energy? I'm using for a similar resource penetration data available for USA to compare how their different sources are costing. So this is again from Lazards. If you see in 2047, our VRE capacity mix, solar is provisioned to be 58% and wind is provisioned to be 20%. And there are 5 ISO data I have available, and the nearest one I could locate is CAISO, California ISO, which has currently 2024, they have 52% solar penetration, and wind penetration is almost same, wind is same. So CAISO, if we take CAISO, the solar cost of firmed up supply cost is $153, while the solar standalone cost is $49 per megawatt hour. So almost twice the standalone cost of solar is being used to firm up that supply. This, of course, will not be same for India. It depends upon the type of balancing which is done, whether it is done through storage, battery storage, or pump storage, or gas. So it all depends, but this gives you a magnitude of increase in the levelized cost of energy when we use this high level of VRE. Similarly, for wind, $80 is their standalone cost, which becomes $177. So that is the reason you'll find that even in USA, California has got very high energy charges, almost 30 cents an unit. Whereas other states which are Texas, if we see ERCOT, Texas is using a balance. They have a good level of renewable, but it is balanced. Solar is only 21% and wind is 44%. With that, they have been able to contain their levelized cost of energy. So we have to be mindful in which direction we will be moving, because there is an international experience available. This is just to give a trend in what was there. It was there in 2023. 2023 solar was only 32% in California and prices were less, and same was with the wind. So as you add variability, the prices keep on increasing. And this is a comparative from where to where last 2 years data I have used. And rise is again due to farming reasons, how it is being farmed up. Now projected per capita electricity availability. Currently we are about 1250. This 1250 is 1/3 of the global average. Global average is 3600 kilowatt hours. So currently we are 1/3. And in 2047, the per capita, the total electricity generation will be 4582. And the population is projected to be 1.6 billion. So we'll not be reaching even the current global average even in 2047. So we'll be paying a very, very high cost for this high level of VRE. I'm not against environment, but I'm saying that we have to follow some path which is sustainable for the national goals. Now again, let's see how the developed countries, they are positioned 25 years before their net zero commitment. Say almost all the European countries, they have given their net zero commitment in 2050, except for Sweden and Germany. And what is their VRE share? except for Denmark, which is a very small, tiny country with only 35 billion unit of total consumption, all are having around 30-40% of VRE share 25 years before NZC, net zero commitment. What we are planning, 27 is our net zero commitment year. In 2047, which is 23 years before that, we are planning 65%. We are taking a route steeper than what the Europeans or even China or USA have not taken. China is only 13% in VRE currently against our 11, and USA is 14%. So what is the compulsion? Why we are taking such a high VRE roadmap? That is, we must discuss, because the country is going to pay a heavy cost in terms of economic development by making the energy expensive. This is just to compare why Denmark is there. So Denmark is very small, so there is no point. Now, again, important factor which will contribute to the cost of power is the VRE penetration and relationship with it PRM, that is planning reserve margin. Now, we are talking in terms of 15-20% planning reserve margin. But the VRE content which we are having is more than 50%. It is 65% in energy terms and 80% in capacity terms. And for that, the PRM should be more than 30%. So for a projected peak demand of 363 in 2032, and this PRM, we should have 472 capacity available with capacity credit system, and 697,906 should be available with us in capacity credit terms. I did a simulation with different software. I don't have access to Ordano or Plexos, but I did with a fairly more accurate, which does the probabilistic analysis. And it shows basically that while we are able to meet our solar peak demand very comfortably with the given resource penetration in high VRE scenario, because of storage is also going to help us, and the capacity factor is also contributing. But this is for the solar peak period. That means if the 697 megawatt, which is the estimated peak for 2047, we can safely meet it. And the 95% probability is that we'll meet it with a very good margin. However, for non-solar period, there is a huge risk. The huge risk is that there will be not effective PRM. In fact, there is a 5% chance of not meeting the during the dark doldrum period. Dark doldrum is when there is a double sort of whammy in terms of there is no sunlight and the wind is also not there. So there is hardly anything which is available from the VRE sources. So this is one factor the simulation told this thing. Now, coming to the emission of the grid, is very, very heartening to see that the emission will be drastically coming down currently from 0.73 kg CO2 to 0.2, which is a very good number, and it will help us in decarbonizing the grid. And the real benefit of grid decarbonization and sectoral coupling comes only with around 0.5, because the electric vehicles currently do not offer any environmental benefit because they are fed by the coal based grid. So we'll have definitely an environmental friendly scenario supported in the grid. Now, coming to the good part of the grid, it enhances the energy security by reducing dependence on our fossil fuel and mitigated the price volatility, exceed our NDC commitment of 50% non-fossil fuel, reduces our emission intensity, fast track. We are following a trajectory which is steeper than the developed nation, and rapidly it will decarbonize the grid. However, the challenging part is again managing the grid with a very high intermittency and variability. On the energy equity front, the trilemma of energy security, equity, and environment. Environment is addressed, equity is partially addressed, security is addressed, equity is partially addressed in the sense that it improves the per capita electricity availability marginally. But on affordability front, it doesn't meet that criteria. So on trilemma, it meets 2 and maybe half point we don't meet. Significant, there is a shortage from growth, developed nation ambition. There's definitely 2,850 kilowatt hour is far less than the current global average as well as the range of developing nations per capita energy consumption. Another big issue which I realized was that there is an institute known as National Institute of Solar Energy under the MNRE, which has estimated that the total solar potential is about 784 gigawatts. And against that, the 2047 resource the plan is not a draft, it's not a resource adequacy, but it's a draft, has projected about 1186 gigawatt. So which is almost 50% more than the national potential. So how this will come out, I didn't have much details about that because I couldn't attend that October brainstorming, so I can't comment on that. Then excessive solarization will lead to solar cannibalization. The investment will not come because there will be too much of solar during the day. The prices will not become remunerative, and there will be solar cannibalization and also curtailment if there is not adequate storage. There will be land diversion from agriculture to solar wind because almost 25,000 square kilometer of land will be required to meet this projected target. Pump storage and battery storage, there is a round trip efficiency loss which will amount to about 3%. This is just notional, but is a figure I thought must be kept in mind. PRM, I have already discussed on the dark doldrum nights. And what else? Yes, the biggest issue here is that whatever we are planning is based on the historical. There is no, because our structure of demand side is not captured. There is a serious lack of granular high resolution data from the system operator. And there is no net load data consideration. Because whenever we are planning, we have to plan based on what is the net load after taking into account the variable renewable energy, etc., etc. That data is somehow missing in the whole exercise unless until we bring out that, our calculations are going to be very, very different. And maybe to begin with, we can move with capacity credit because best is the worst if we do not start at all. So maybe we can start with capacity credit, but over the next few years, we have to migrate to a different method, which is ELCC. Why? I'll just tell you. Net load ramping requirement needs to be analyzed and grid inertia needs to be analyzed. Demand side flexibility has already been mentioned. Just transition. When you are taking out such a huge capacity of coal, which gives employment to more than 10 million people, we have to plan whether the same sort of employment is also created in the new scenario. And it's a very, very milky source of revenue for the government. Annually gives more than 75,000 crore. Besides revenue is only the tax part of it. So whether the government is going to come up with something else or not. Now, why we need ELCC, that is effective load carrying capability, and not capacity credit method? Because we are going to have a very high level of VRE. And the capacity credit method is only suited for basic sort of structure with a VRE share less than 30%. But 30% we have already breached. So from that perspective, it is better, but ELCC is very, very complex. We need very sophisticated computer models and requires training, etc., which is going to take time. So maybe till such time we have got ELCC in place and our system operator nudge to make the disclosure of these high resolution datas, granular datas to the planners. Till such time, perhaps we can carry on with the capacity credit method, but ultimately next 3, 4, or maybe 5 years, we should switch over to ELCC method. Otherwise, our planning is going to go haywire. And if you are expecting DISCOMs to make fixed contract capacity for next 25 years, we are asking too much of risk for them. So what we should do, again, start with granular data and net load data, ELCC method, limit the VRE resource penetration to 60% only. There's no benefit the country will get by taking a very steep VRE and VRE scenario. Target per capita at least 4,000 kilowatt hours so that we are somewhere near the developed nation ambition, and align our net zero carbon path. Don't make it steeper. Front loading is double whammy in the sense you land up with obsolete, inefficient technology which blocks your capacity to employ them for the next future. So there's no advantage in going in for a steeper VRE scenario. Focus should be nuclear SMR because they are most efficient, and offshore wind to reduce pressure on land. SVDC, we are already talking about. Gas base for ramping up. And the ratio of solar wind has to be strategically allocated because of the transmission associated cost. And the investment in flexible infrastructure is there to capture the demand side of resource, because this is only supply side resource. The capacity credit method is only supply side resource. And there are a lot of other items which need to be brought into the demand side. Storage is there, behind the meter storage, smart grid NMI, flexible generation, etc., etc. Grid expansion, smart metering is already talked about. Yes, market mechanism is one which is going to bring in. Just because we have a plan, nobody is going to put in money. There is already, we are seeing that the renewable energy segment is under a lot of stress because there are issues, the capacity of the distribution company to buy those power, and there is a reluctance from the developers to also put in lot of money. So we need a total restructuring of market mechanism, how we are operating our current market. The market share is only hardly 7%, and rest is either long-term PPA or 7% is OTs, over-the-counter trade. That needs to substantially change. The share of market has to go up, and DISCOM should not be forced to go in for long-term contract. They should have the liberty to rationalize need, work out their need, and take a medium to short-term assessment. Because the guideline says that you contract 70 to 75% by long-term PPA. I think the implementability is going to be a questionable one. Introduce dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is one, unless until to begin with we introduce in the wholesale and then gradually bring it down to the retail level, it is not going to help. So for that, we need to go in for a structural change in the market mechanism. And incentive is, this I have already talked about, critical pricing, time of use tariff. So these are the regulatory changes which needs to be brought in from dynamic pricing. And capacity building for stakeholders is already discussed about, and institutional capacity strengthening, this is already discussed. Yes, new financial products need to be brought into. First is that the products like contract for differences. This is widely used elsewhere, where the contracts are offered to the developer that this is the strike price, and any fall below that in the market price will be compensated by the government. And if you get more than that in the market, that will be taken away. That has been a very effective way of making the investment in a secure manner. And introduction of forward market. We are operating in 3 months forward market, and I don't know what is happening. Proposal to introduce 11-month market is still pending for more than 2 years, despite the GNA has been introduced and all those things. So those things need to be pushed into. Derivatives by the financial market for hedging. And this is, I think there are plenty of things we need to be thought about. It is too short a time to express each and every point. But long and short of it is the current set of rules of the game, perhaps business as usual mode make the things much more difficult and will not take us to the desired level. So we need to sit down again and see how we can do, and good plan makes the half of implementation. So I think I'll conclude here because I have used up my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. R.P. Singh, for a very, very informative presentation and giving very useful suggestions. With your permission, we would like to circulate your presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. May I now request Mr. Chintan Shah to give his address?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir, and amazing talk by Ghanshyam sir and Singh sir. Coming from the industry, I'll have a little bit of different perspective. So let me just try to put the context on three major pillars. The RAD is a great thing. The capacity credit paper, I'm going through it. I got my own observations to it, which any case I'll be submitting it to CEA. But we have to also look at three major things that is occurring in India. We are now on the cusp of tapering of ISTS waiver. We know it from June 25 onwards, ISTS waiver is getting reduced. But ISTS waiver is going to continue for certain technologies and projects like offshore, like PSP, and also green hydrogen. At the same time, you already have a fair amount of contracted capacity or bidded capacity for pure solar and wind already in the market, bidded by the REIs. Some of the PPAs have been signed, some would be signed. And then we have also a massive push towards Kusum, which is pure solar, and also rooftop solar. So we are talking about, this is the reality at this junction. This leads to a couple of issues. From the last couple of years, all the projects in renewables, most of them are appearing on ISTS because of ISTS waiver. So bulk of the state transmission utility have stopped investing into transmission assets because no projects would come up at state level, very few. Now with the change of the regime, it would make it's making a commercial sense to go to a state. So one first important thing that comes to my mind is, except barring 2 or 3 states, actually you don't have adequate transmission capacities at state level, at STU level. I think that's something that has to be propped up very fast. Otherwise, what may happen is projects may still then come out ISTS with a very, very higher cost to the consumers, and this may not find a permission to the regulatory commissions. So that's something that comes into my mind. This is a very short term but very important part. On the RAD thing, however, the RAD is yet to be fully adopted by the state commissions, but bulk of the DISCOMs have already contracted the capacities much beyond the RAD. I know it is one particular state that has already contracted 70% of the RAD capacity for 2030. Now, in such a situation, what might happen? We might have to relook at the entire RAD plan at the state level, not at the central level. And I've gone through, glanced through the capacity credit paper. It's a very good move. However, there are 2 things which comes to mind in the capacity credit. One is, it has to be obviously on a monthly basis, a little bit more detailed, and maybe also on the time basis. And the third that comes to my mind is maybe one level up, one level down is also needed. For example, now not every state is of the same size and the same consumption pattern. So within a particular state, for example, Maharashtra, it's a very fairly large state, and the consumption pattern in the eastern Maharashtra is quite different from the western Maharashtra. So maybe some states might require drawdown of the capacity credit, and some states which are too small might have to compute the capacity credit at regional level. That is something that flexibility should be getting into it. So we will have a overall perspective of how the entire planning can finally happen and investments happen. One more thing that comes to my mind is when we have a fair amount of contracted solar capacity. The problem with solar is the entire solar in India mostly is getting installed between 70° north and 70° south, 70 degrees south. So it's 70° north and 80° north longitude. It's coming in a strip, vertical strip in India, which means that you have a structural problem of solar hours remaining same across India. It's not going horizontal, it's going vertical. And when you have fair amount of solar coming in the afternoon, it also going to lead up a fair amount of over voltage issues. Solar would come at all levels, right from rooftop to Kusum, which is embedded generation, STU and CTU. So one thing that comes again over here is we need to somehow link PSP facilities with solar hours. Very, very important, because you require an inertial load at least structurally for 6 hours. That's what's going to happen in the future. So I think PSPs, the way the PSP is perceived today, PSP versus BESS, I think it's a wrong perception. PSP essentially would regulate the voltage also, apart from storing electricity. That is the purpose of PSP. So PSP has to be viewed differently. Well, BESS, I can understand you can maximum give a synthetic inertia of about half an hour, 1 hour, but we require an inertial load for a couple of hours, longer hours. One more thing that also comes to the mind in this entire setup is we have also created a structural demand. One of them is Saubhagya scheme, because people who are not electrified before have been now served electricity, and those are the people who essentially are working during the day. So now the consumption in the night is going up because of Saubhagya scheme, which is a little bit aided with 200-300 units free electricity, which is given by various state governments. So we have a structural demand creation in the evening or in the night, which is a fact which is reflected also during these summers on the exchanges, where the electricity price in the night was almost 10 rupees, while the evening was 8 rupees. So you have a new demand creation which was unheard of before, but that's a fact today, and this is likely to continue as it is. And apart from this, fair amount of rooftop is going to happen in India. And again, the rooftop, what is likely to happen is they will inject electricity in the afternoon, during the day, and essentially go for a net metering in the evening. So these are structural changes which are happening, which is very important to get put down in the model itself. And the last thing that comes to my mind is in this same linkages is when we are looking at calculating capacity credit, I think we are again relying on historical data, which is fine. But renewables, the beauty is the technologies keep on changing. So I would also suggest that the capacity credit should also look into pictures of newer technologies that may get employed. For example, in case of wind itself, we have now the 5th generation wind turbines globally available. It's yet to be introduced in India, which are essentially pure synchronous generators, and they can actually give you about an hour or so of synthetic inertia. Similarly, in case of solar, you have different type of technologies available now. Now, traditionally in India is using north-south orientation in solar, because the whole idea was to maximize generation, higher plant load factor. The moment you go on an east-west orientation, you essentially create two humps, the morning hump and the evening hump. So you essentially reduce electricity in the afternoon, it's flat, while you have a hump in the morning and the evening, because you have an east-west orientation like this. Now, this may lead to lower plant load factor, but if the capacity credit market, it would essentially incentivize people to put up an east-west orientation. So you have a new entire vista of activities. So you know to essentially and reduce your battery requirement. This has been experimented and utilized in Germany, because Germany has a market which incentivizes a peak rate for a generator. So people have experimented in Germany, and since we don't have such market today in India, we are agnostic to it. So people are going for a north-south orientation with dual axis. You can do the same thing on an east-west side. And again, these are things that comes to my mind which should be also factored into both in terms of R&D as well as capacity credit. I think Shahis made it very nicely. He said that the demand would follow the supply. I to a great extent agree with that. At least from the industry's perspective, the manufacturing industry's perspective, I did some more calculations from my side. The way the Make in India is getting pushed in India, so OEMs are coming in, and their vendors are also coming in. So at least bare minimum projection I have got is you will at least increase your base demand by 15 gigawatt per annum. That's likely to happen, majorly because of industries and other because of fair amount of disposable income available with people. The good part is because of urbanization, the day demand is likely to grow. and will continue to grow. The problem is the base demand. What happened during non-solar hours? That is something that needs to be factored in. I think in a very detailed manner. But as an industry, normally industry always responds to commercials. So maybe is it the right time to look at the tariff structure itself in the light of the capacity credit paper? Should we look for like a multi-part tariff? Essentially, you incentivize people to generate or supply electricity during the peak hours, non-solar hours, and also you disincentivize people to also consume during the same hours. So the entire TOD setup also maybe requires relocated, because you have to look at both, because this is more of a supply side thing. You also look at the demand side part also. Unless you match both, there's gonna be a challenge. That's what I feel. And one more thing. Yeah, and I think forecasting is very important. If CA is signing an MOU with IMD, it's very good. What I would suggest is two more things to be added over there. You have almost like more than 100 gigawatt of RE capacities in India, and almost 80-90% of that RE capacity is set up by private sector, and almost entire private sector has also got real data. Either they put the MatMasts or they are measuring the solar installation in real time. I think it's high time that we can pull up this data from the private sector, put it to IMD, that IMD utilizes this data, because these are microclimatic data, because IMD normally have a regional data or a state level data, and these are very, very climatic data, and maybe create something like a neural model, statistical model, which got an interface with IMD's set imagery data to give you a better forecast in terms of generation. And this would essentially only improve to address the variability of renewables, which is inherent. You can't help it, which is a fact. So that's what I had in my mind, Rakesh sir. Yeah, and the last thing, I just wanted to comment to Singh sir. The nice data is based on an assumption of certain percentage of land available. So if you change the percentage of land available, the data changes in terms of potential. As simple as that. I also agree that we need to, on the CFD side, I think it's high time we deepen our electricity markets. The exchange itself, the exchange deepness is hardly about 15 gigawatt, not more than that. And in that case, can we create a structured supply solution? For example, if REIs are bidding, it's called a bid for RE projects, can just set aside 15% or 10% of that capacity to be essentially put it on the exchange itself. But today in an exchange, there is no supplier who's there for next 25 years. They come and go. Very few suppliers are pure merchant players. So we need to create that structure of supply itself. If there is a 25-year supply available, maybe demand would follow. And the classic issue of CFD is that one has this high time to demarcate the jurisdiction for adjudication between SEBI, Foreign Market Commission, and CERC. Unless that happens, there's going to be a challenge on the CFD, and I think high time it's needed now. That's it from my side, sir.
Thank you, Chintan Shahji, for very useful suggestions that you have given. Thank you so much. May I now request Mr. Balwant Joshi. And Balwant, I want to ask you one thing, whether the resource adequacy planning should also specify, should also give the RE curtailment that is likely to take place, and whether our future PPAs, maybe it is time to think whether they should be must run, or we should also have some provision for some curtailment. It's a small percentage, and the tariff is bidded accordingly. Just your views. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you so much. I will, first of all, thank you, Rakesh Nath sir. Thank you, Shahi sir. RP Singh sir, for really giving the opening remarks and your presentation on the macro issues. That was eye-opener in terms of what is the kind of a status the countries had 25 years before the commitment of their net zero, and what kind of a commitment that we are giving vis-a-vis our net zero commitment of 2070. So, these are the issues that that are very, very important from the macroeconomic perspective. Per capita consumption, I'm not so sure whether we should really target for 4,000 units per capita consumption, but certainly that need to increase. There is no doubt about it. One thing that is certain is that we need to change the basic structure of our electricity sector. We need to have a different methodology for planning. And I think CA has done a commendable job. Government of India, Ministry of Power has also done a commendable job in trying to put up a resource adequacy framework. We need to move away from our earlier paradigm of 5-year EPS being published by CA. That is no more a kind of a way of doing business in the electricity sector. And resource adequacy is certainly needed. How it should be implemented, we could have some questions, we could have some doubts about the way it is being done or in capacity crediting. But the two things that is, I think, in my view, are certainly important. One is the new paradigm, which is the resource adequacy in terms of the planning for the electricity sector. And the second one that needs to a massive change is in the demand forecasting. Now, in the demand forecasting, what needs to be done, I will come back to in my a short presentation that I want to share with you. Please let me know if my screen is visible. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I will put it onto the, for those who don't know IDAM, we are a consulting company and operate in the field of the sustainable energy. Our goal is enabling carbon minimal world. We don't talk about a net zero, or we don't believe in that, we can really get away the entire carbon or fossil fuels. But we certainly believe in that maximum renewables need to be integrated into the system, whatever way we can do it. I have got a few slides about IDAM, but I'm going to skip because I have realized that we are already short on time. I'm just going to present one slide. We are IDAM is a Sanskrit word, which means this or it, and our logo goes with our name, and the earth is at the center, and again India is at the center because we are India-based company. We have got 5 small circles around earth, which represents 5 basic elements: air, fire, water, earth, and space. Green fins represents churning, and which we believe that with the help of this Pancha Mahabhuta, we need to keep earth stable or sustainable. Idam literally means in English is this or it. I will skip the other slides whenever you have time or if you are interested, can look at it. In terms of our experience in resource adequacy, we are active in resource adequacy related modeling as well as the regulatory piece with forum of regulators as well as with the state level regulatory commissions. So let's look at objectively what is the position in terms of the resource adequacy regulations, because this is the first point where the state DISCOMs would be mandated to prepare their resource adequacy plans. And you would see only 6 or 7 states have published their final resource adequacy regulations. And the major states that have published is Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. These are the states, large states that have published the resource adequacy regulations, final notifications, which are in blue in color. The ones which are orange in color are still draft. Those are 8 or 9 states. So total around 15, 16 states that have actually gone ahead on the path of preparing the resource adequacy regulations. The major ones that are missing, Rajasthan and Gujarat. So these are the states where these resource adequacy regulations are missing. Out of these states, as I said, we are active in 5 states: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, and Assam. With Rajasthan not on the regulatory front, but on the modeling front. So on the other 4 states, we have done the resource adequacy regulatory support to the regulatory commissions. And I will talk about what are the key issues that are coming up over here. The first and foremost, about a demand assessment and forecasting, what should be the horizon for which it is done. Short term, there is absolutely no issue. It is first 1 year only. Medium term, if you see the CA rules earlier, there was no mention of medium term. However, the FOR regulations or FOR model draft regulations talked about medium term, which is 5. Most states have done 5 years except for Karnataka, which has not mentioned it. What is the rationale for 5 years? The states have got a multi-year tariffs regulations which are for 5 years. So idea is that at some point of time, those would align with the multi-year tariff regulations, and there would be synergy in the process, the way the MYT tariffs are determined and our resource adequacy plan is done. In terms of a granularity, I think it's very important. This issue is also linked with data availability for the past period and how are we going to do the short-term, medium-term and a long-term forecasting for the resource adequacy purposes. As far as the 4 model regulations are concerned, it talks about hourly and sub-hourly for all 3. But the states have taken sometimes a pragmatic view and taken a deviation from that. And if you see, the hourly and sub-hourly has been kind of a mandated for the short term, except for Tamil Nadu, who has talked about hourly. In terms of medium term, there is a difference. Most states have gone for hourly, and for the long term, the states have gone for the monthly peak and off peak in Maharashtra as well as in the Assam, hourly in Tamil Nadu, and hourly sub-hourly in case of Karnataka. So while this may or may not have immediate impact on the way the resource adequacy is calculated and the capacity credits are in the short term, it would certainly have an impact on how the capacity credits would be calculated on the medium term and how the synergy with the entire national plan is achieved. In case of capacity crediting methodology, we heard RP Singh sir's view on the ELCC, and Karnataka has adopted as a future methodology that is for the ELCC, but all states have adopted top net load curves or not top net load hours as a methodology for the purpose of the current capacity crediting mechanism. A lot of work that need to be done. CA has already come out with a paper, and which is a lot technical, and that would lead to the issue about the capacity building that is needed in those agencies who are going to do the resource adequacy planning. The capacity credit methods, one issue. The type of resources is the second issue, and for which the capacity crediting is being done. As far as the hydro and thermal is concerned, there is no actually concern. We have got a very standard established methodology. The issue would come up about the BESS and the pump storage. Now, Forum of Regulators hasn't mentioned anything about a BESS. The Maharashtra has said about the top net load hours, but the other 3 states, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Assam, they have not mentioned about how the BESS should be treated. And the BESS and pump storage, how it should be treated. In fact, along with that, how are we going to treat the resource? Like RTC and FDR is going to be an issue. CA paper has discussed that, but we need to bring a consensus on that to ensure that we have got a consistent methodology across states. Then comes the issue about the procurement mix, type and tenure. Forum of Regulators has talked about that is a short-term DRAP, that is a distribution resource adequacy plan, and medium-term distribution adequacy plan. The states have taken a little deviation. Some states have asked for the long-term also. So the long-term DRAP has been asked for by Maharashtra and Assam. However, approval has been kind of limited only to the short-term and medium-term. So the idea is to look at what is going to be the long-term requirement also, long-term the procurement plans also of the distribution companies, while not tie them up to the long-term procurement, but tie them up for the medium-term procurement. The next issue is about what should be the share. We have decided resource adequacy requirement, RAR, in the short term as well as medium term, and how that would be procured. Whether that would be procured through the long term, medium term, and short term. There is an emphasis on the long term and medium term in the FOR model regulations. Maharashtra, most other, or in fact, all the states talk about minimum 70% as a long term share into their resource mix. Medium term is minimum 20%. And that would leave only remaining part for the short term. Now, whether the short term includes all the bilateral open access transactions. I'm not talking about a consumer open access transaction. I'm not about section 42.2 transactions, but I'm talking about the utility transactions into this and the exchange traded transactions, and the short-term transactions on that, if that is excluded from there, then the remaining share is around 10%. But if that is included into short-term share, it's going to be less than 10%. And as RP Singh sir said, the share of the short-term and a medium-term, share of the short-term exchange transactions and the short-term open access transactions is around 7 to 8%. The total market, including DSM, including bilateral D2D trades, that is the seasonal trades, banking trades, is around 12% in the country today on an annual basis. And if we remove the DSM and the utility bilateral seasonal trade, the market is actually just 7%. So there is a dichotomy in the thought process whether we want to have a larger share of the market, that is the exchange and exchange traded products, including the financial derivatives. Then we need to have a change in the thought process while doing the resource adequacy plan itself. In terms of the compliance, all the states have talked about 100% compliance for the first year and for the 90% compliance for the second year. The next issue is about a non-compliance treatment, how it will be treated. There is first, there is a kind of a feeling among the regulators also, and certainly among the distribution companies, that the compliance penalty should be deferred. And so for a period of at least for first couple of years, so as to ensure that the capacity building takes place. Since we work with the regulators, we understand their point of view also, and they feel that unless and until there is a penalty, there will not be rapid capacity building. Necessary efforts to do the capacity building will not be put up. Now, the penalty that has been defined in the FOR regulations, more or less the same thing has been implemented or adopted by the states. That is 1.1 times marginal capacity charge and 1.25 times average capacity charge, whichever is greater. The issue over here is that how are you going to define the marginal capacity charge and the average capacity charge? The way we see it, there could be multiple methodologies to do the capacity crediting. We have seen the multiple methodologies adopted for the cross-subsidy surcharge or additional surcharge. The same way, there could be multiple methodologies for the calculation of the marginal capacity charge as well as average capacity charge. And I think it is high time that either CEA or Forum of Regulator comes into play and defines these methodologies at the beginning itself, so that there is no issue of different interpretation by the different regulatory commissions in the country. I wanted to keep the presentation short, and that's the reason I'm just moving directly to the implementation challenges. The biggest issue in our view is the data requirement and the data availability. That is, resource adequacy means you need a granular data, hourly, sub-hourly data. We need extensive data compilation for multiple years, and the CA has gone through that exercise for a period of time. But we need to put in place the system wherein this data is collected consistently over a period of time. Now, the data that has been collected is primarily at a distribution company level, that is at that level. But what we need, if we really want to understand how the demand is changing, what would be the impact of the rooftop solar, what would be the impact on the demand response onto the different consumer categories. So for that, we need to have the extensive load surveys done, and that demand drivers data related to the consumption by the different consumer categories has to be collated, has to be maintained on a regular basis. Bureau of Energy Efficiency had started some of these activities in terms of the load surveys. Unfortunately, that was only 1 year or one-time activity. While moving forward, we need to have that as a recurring activity at a distribution company level. So timely data compilation, collection and recording. We also need to do is that standardize these data templates, to be used by the multiple data agencies. We still have a challenge in terms of, rooftop solar, which is fairly recent, and in terms of how much capacity of rooftop solar really exists. And this is a challenge. And that is for something like rooftop solar, which are the generating plants. We can imagine what could be the confusion that would arise with the the consumer categories that exist at the distribution company level and across the distribution company levels. So, we need to have some kind of a standard data templates for use and deployment by the planning agencies. Demand forecasting. big area. We have seen 19 TPS and then subsequently the challenges faced. Ghanshyam Prasad ji talked about the issue with respect to the stranded capacity that we had. Now we are fairly getting kind of addressing that particular issue. But moving forward, if we don't want to have that issue, and I will come back to the comment which Rakesh Nath sir said about the stranded capacity or the load or the generation curtailment requirement in the that may be needed in future. Yes, that would certainly be needed. But before that, if you want to reduce the potential or the requirement of the generation curtailment, we need to have a better demand forecasting so that we are able to plan our storage requirement. So timely adoption of this new processes and capacity building is a big challenge. The third issue is about optimization modeling. These models are fairly complex. The kind of models that we need to develop to assess the resource requirements, say in 2032 or 2034, or even for 2027, these are fairly complex models. We need to have the stochastic analysis. We need to do the different weather forecast modeled into it to see what is the kind of the energy not served, what is the kind of LOLP. And to be able to do that, these models have to be run by the distribution companies, as well as not only by the distribution companies also, but by the STUs and SLDs. And this is there is a total or significant lack of capability among the distribution companies. While the steps taken by CA are commendable in terms of sitting with the distribution companies, as well as asking them to come to Delhi or going to the state, while that is fine, a lot more need to be done in the case of modeling exercises. Synergy between the multiple agencies, the way the entire RA framework is that, it tries to optimize at every level. That is at a distribution company level, state level, national level. We have a requirement that CA and NLDC would publish LT and ST NRAP, which would get fed into the distribution companies, and then distribution companies will prepare their own RAPs. While the process is ideal, there is no doubt about it. And that is something that we should strive to achieve. Maybe we need some tweak, okay, and maybe we need some kind of a interim phase, wherein probably we may try to do it at a regional level, and then try to do it at a national level at a wholesome kind of a process. Why I'm saying this? We saw just now the number of states that have implemented RA regulation, and that's the first step. The first step is RA regulation, then the RA plans, then RA plans would be approved, then it will get into the multi-year tariff regulation. It's a complex process. The timelines are very, very aggressive for implementation. That is my next point. That is, the timelines are very aggressive. It would become really overbearing in the first few years of implementation. It's going to be fast change. So probably we need to think about the number of agencies and how we do it, whether we can do it at a regional level first for the first few years and then go to the national level. Non-compliance in initial years, I already explained these particular issues, that considering the lot of complexities and the way the complete shift in the paradigm taking place in the planning process, probably we need a little bit of deferment of the levy for non-compliance in initial period. There is one issue which is kind of hanging over, that is clarity on treatment of the partial and full open access consumers. Rakesh Nath sir talked about that it should be made mandatory that RA on the ISTS connected consumers. Chintan also talked about ISTS, but in a different process. We need to have some clarity on that and how the STUs and SLDCs will deal with this particular issue. Asking open access consumers, especially partial open access consumers, green energy open access consumers, to demonstrate RA is like a killing that sector. And certainly that should not be the process. We have to have some other way to ensure RA, but at the same time not killing the market as far as the open access consumer segment is concerned. And finally, the last point on my presentation is about a lack of clarity in terms of the capacity market Of course, it's too early. We don't have the capacity creating mechanisms finalization, but probably some discussion paper, if a discussion takes place on the capacity markets, that will be helpful. Last slide on my presentation. We are having a workshop on the resource adequacy in Maharashtra on the 5th of December. Those of you who are in Maharashtra, if you are interested, please let us know. Please join us for this workshop. This is the capacity building workshop. So we are going to discuss first of all, overall resource adequacy related issues, regulations, tools, generation resource adequacy, and another most important component is the transmission resource adequacy. Chintan referred to transmission resource adequacy in the form of shift from the ISTS to INSTS due to ISTS waiver being taken away. And that's important. That is going to lead to the transmission resource adequacy related issues in many states, especially where the resource or the RE is very strong. If the state is RE rich. We did one exercise with Maharashtra Transco, and on the transmission resource adequacy, we would be discussing that as well. On that, I think Maharashtra is the only state which have really looked at the transmission resource adequacy. But that is certainly going to be the critical issue in next, not long, but just 2 years period of time. As soon as ISTR waiver goes off, the transmission resource adequacy becomes a critical issue. So I will stop over here. The only point that I have not addressed, Rakesh Nath sir, is about the PPAs. The PPAs certainly need a lot of modification. We need to have a short-term, the tenure of the PPA need to be reduced. So from current 25 years to around 15 years, we probably need more flexible PPAs. And when I say flexible PPAs, not only in terms of tenure, but in terms of pricing, the PPAs, in terms of ability to go to the market of those PPAs. So certainly those would be needed. We also would probably will have to look at the must-run provisions within the PPAs in the times to come, as soon as we have already reaching the RE in many states at a very high level. So that is something that we need to look at. The curtailment related provisions, if we have to do that, we need to have different methodology for setting the PPA costs. We need to probably need some kind of a two-part tariff for the PPAs, for the RE PPAs. Then we can look at removing must run so that we maintain the balance between the profitability of the generation company and the stability of the grid. So I will stop over here. If there are any clarifications, we'll be happy to respond.
Thank you, Balwant, for your excellent presentation. And I must clarify one thing that when I talked of establishing or demonstrating resource adequacy, I was talking of the consumers who are directly connected to ISTS and who are not dependent on the distribution licenses. I was not talking about the consumers who are partly dependent on distribution licenses. So we have also Mr. Alok Kumar in the audience. May I request Mr. Alok Kumar to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And it has been a very good webinar. A lot of information has come. Most of the points have been covered. So I will make my short intervention, sir. So I'd like to begin with that, the economic growth and decarbonization. These are larger policy issues. Power sector can support these issues. Power sector cannot drive these issues alone. So whether we grow and what percent, power sector can support it. And RP Singh ji spoke a lot about decarbonization. I think it's a policy decision, and there are many larger issues involved about the climate vulnerability and our responsibility. So it is not that simple. So I'll come to the power sector. What is important is that power sector should be capable of supporting the demand. And I agree with Shahi Saab that demand is going to grow continuously. There should not be an iota of doubt that where will the demand come from. India will see continuous unprecedented growth in demand for the next 20 years at least. Sir, talking of the resource adequacy, it is not just generation capacity. And we should also distinguish between resource adequacy and capacity expansion planning. Capacity expansion planning is a continuous long-term process, whereas resource adequacy is normally done for next 3, 4, 5 years to meet reliability standard. In our webinar, so far nobody has spoken about reliability standard. We cannot talk of a resource adequacy without referring to what standard do we want. and there's a cost implication. So we have to settle down that for meeting a given reliability standard, the loss of load probability and other things, what is the resource required for meeting demand reliably in all time blocks? And it is not just generation capacity, it is also like the transmission capacity, your demand response is storage, because system operator has to use all resources, not only generation, to meet the demand. One thing I'll like to clarify, this topic of the webinar is the resource adequacy by DISCOMs. That is one important part, but resource adequacy has to be seen at system level. So normally system operator will have to see that all those who are on demand side, load serving entities and other big loads, they have to have their proper capacity procured. It is very difficult to agree with Mr. Chintan Shah that the large loads should not be made to have their own capacity procurement. DISCOMs can't be burdened with the capacity procurement for large open access consumers. They will have to meet their obligations. So there are two important concepts. We are thinking of the procuring capacity, not necessarily energy procurement. And I will also like to clarify, exchange doesn't generate capacity. So if somebody goes to, so system should have capacity to generate and to provide the generation. So we cannot depend on power exchanges, and that's written in the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Power also. Purchases from exchange is just meeting the surplus and deficit in a shorter time frame. So we have to move from PPAs to capacity markets. That point was made by Balwant also. I think the major thing along with capacity, say resource adequacy, is the CRC has to act faster to develop capacity markets in India. You cannot have a capacity resource adequacy framework in place without a proper capacity markets. And one important thing in markets is the market signal in terms of the capacity value mechanism. Like how much capacity will come, at what pace will come in the long term, should be decided by market signals, not by decision by DISCOMs. Coming to DISCOM level, I have 5 action points which will facilitate resource adequacy. One is like National Smart Grid Mission. It started like 8-9 years ago. We have to have a mission. Only CA cannot do RA in the country. We have to have a very active participation from the government level to support the states in the RDSS program, to spend money on their tools, their training and all. It's a very major thing. Data templates, we are doing some resource adequacy in certain states. Data is a major problem. So data templates have to be standardized by CA. Next, I don't agree with Balwant Joshi that short-term demand forecasting is an easy thing. No, it is otherwise. Short-term demand forecasting is very, very difficult because the parameters are very difficult to predict. And there are very intricate, complex models for the short-term demand forecasting. So this is an aspect which has to be given more attention. Model refinement, I agree that currently what CA is doing, it has to be improved. They have done a wonderful job. State level has to be a multinodal, say, model, more granular, stochastic, and they have to also consider the interstate power flows. Currently, the RA plans made by CA are for a state as a standalone. They have to consider the interstate flows. Sir, procurement model for DISCOM is a big confusion in sector today. DISCOM should procure FD, plain vanilla solar, or storage should be standalone. I believe government now has to come out with a proper guidelines for the DISCOMs how to procure the capacity in future. And I agree with Mr. Rakesh that you cannot have a storage tied up in a 25-year PPA and lose all the flexibility which is required to propose, which is required to provide in the resource adequacy exercise. The DISCOM should have flexibility to use the storage as the times come and the high VRE come. We should move away from this RTC and FDREs for DISCOMs. They are good for the C&I consumers, not for DISCOM. DISCOMs have a large portfolio. They can optimize the use of storage in their portfolio. One last point before I stop, sir, is the transmission pricing. Resource adequacy and the cost to meet the reliability standard will depend on how do we price the transmission. It was good the transmission charge waiver and we were say pricing it like free, but actually transmission has a cost, huge cost. So transmission pricing has to be done in a way that RE generators are motivated to put up a co-located storage in their projects. Otherwise, India have a very high cost of electricity in times to come. So those were my points, and thank you very much for giving me opportunity. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok Kumarji, for very, very important points that you have raised. Mr. Ghanshyam, you want to say something? I see the hand raised by you.
Thank you, sir. And it has really been very, very insightful to hear all the esteemed speakers and also intervention by Alokji. All the presentations were really a good suggestion that has come, and I have noted almost all of them, and we'll work on that. Just wanted to give some input to some of the concerns that has been raised by some of the speakers, particularly with respect to the inertia part of it, and the reason why we are conscious of the inertia, and this has led to some slight shift in the earlier thought, and particularly giving more focus on the nuclear, and this is going to come in a big way. So earlier we had restricted our models, particularly if you see the modeling which had been done by CA, where we had restricted these nuclear capacity to a reasonably low value. Very soon we are going to have this number on a multiplying by a few bigger numbers. The 2-3 action point that has been done, particularly the PMO has already instructed us to have an accelerated plan for nuclear, and they have already told that in next 15 years can we reach to 50 gigawatt of that kind of a target, which means that we need to accelerate, and the possibility seems to be there, particularly with respect to the standardized model that we have in India with respect to the 700 megawatt capacity, which is going to be a good promising one, and which can be replicated in a much faster manner. And NPCIL alone will not do it, and we are trying to target NTPC and other organizations as well, so that parallelly we can achieve this particular target. So this will again the model when we run next time, probably we'll try to factor in these capacities as well. Second thing, which the decision which we are trying to take to promote nuclear is because all these coal-based capacities which are going to complete 40 years and more, we'll be trying to see if these locations can be used for nuclear, and already a task force have been made which is going ahead to identify these sites, see its suitability from the nuclear perspectives, and whether these are meeting the regulatory requirements for setting up of these nuclear power plants. Coal, I think you are already aware, sir, that we are targeting another 80 gigawatt, whether right or wrong, which I'll not comment on that, but definitely it was from the perspective of adding more from the inertia point of view and trying to see that non-solar hours and the cost, which has already been referred to, that the cost of going for VRE is not what we see in the bits that is there in the VRE, particularly solar and wind, but it also has the balancing cost and other cost, related cost, which also comes along with it. Right now, probably we are entering into a zone which is slightly on a higher side of it, and that is how, even though there had been criticism at many of the fora that India is not pushing BESS in a faster manner, probably we had been very, very cautious. We had been trying to test the market. We had been trying to test the construct through the SECI bids and through other bids as well. And now the prices have started coming down, but still it is higher than other alternatives that is available to Indian conditions. So at a right time, definitely the interventions will be done to see that we go in an accelerated manner towards the BESS as well. So in terms of inertia, sir, another action that we are trying to take is going for a synchronous condenser, and we are going to try this out in Barauni, the plant which is likely to be retired, and they wanted to retire it and demolish it. So we said, no, don't demolish it. since RNM has been done in a very recent time, so let us try to use this as an experiment to go for the first synchronous condenser. And if we succeed on that, probably we'll be trying to have some rotating mass coming from this construct as well. We are not able to do those. So, and the third thing that is going to come in the inertia part is grid forming inverters, which we are trying to promote, and probably grid forming inverters will be a good another alternative which will try to ensure the inertia aspect of it. Something was said about the 2047 plan, wherein we had considered about 1200 gigawatt of solar, roughly, whereas the potential which has been said by the NICE is a bit lesser. But I am given to understand, sir, and the input what we got from MNRE while we were doing this study is that they have internally revised this solar potential, and the potentials are much higher than what they had projected earlier. And based on the input from MNRE, we had taken these figures as well, sir. Third thing that I wanted to put across is regarding the which will also add to the inertia is the hydro pump storage. It looks very odd to right now say, probably it may or may not be agreed upon and may not be believed as well, but we are trying to push this capacity on a much faster track. And we are targeting, sir, somewhere around 53 gigawatt by 2032, which is a very aggressive targets that we have set for ourselves. And but we see a reason and the logic for this, and the kind of capacity which is being targeted is all off stream closed loop ones, and some of them which have been conquered by CA, they have promised to bring it in 40 to 44 months, and these are all in the private sectors. So all these with and the even the potential now has gone to 181 gigawatt with a self-identified project. So we are targeting huge amount of PSPs, which again will try to add towards the inertia and also reduce the requirement of the battery energy storage systems. I must thank all the speakers for giving us a very good feedback on the capacity crediting, which I know is the first step. We just wanted to bring some visibility on how do we really do it. But with the inputs and some of the good suggestions have come in writing also to see, we are trying to finalize that, and we'll take care of all the suggestions that is going to come, sir. One more thing I just wanted to touch upon is the IMD forecast. I think that point was also referred by someone. Sir, we have also started using the data from all the RE developers as of now, because I think Mr. Shah had mentioned this. There is already a mechanism that we have established. There is a group along with the IMD, and all the data is now being collected and getting routed through RLDCs, regional load dispatch centers, getting validated, cross-checked, and is being passed on to the IMD. So IMD has now started getting all these real-time data. So now maybe after 1 or 2 years, when they have sufficient data, they will be trying to integrate into their models, and they will try to forecast. What we have said to them is, please don't give me a global forecast, give me a local forecast. And this they will be trying to do, so that this local forecast will be more useful for the specific sites of solar and wind, in terms of their speed, in terms of their cloud cover, in terms of cloud tracking, etc., etc. And this probably we will be able to get these things done. One more point that was being talked about is regarding the 5-year time horizon, which has been set by the FOR in their model. We had slight different view on that. 5-year is good enough to take care of the MYT, which most of the state commission is following it. But if we restrict to 5 years, probably we'll be ruling out the capacity tie-up of the nuclear and other resources, which are likely to take longer time horizon. And if we don't have the visibility, and if we every time target 3 to 5 years, probably the DISCOMs will not be able to go for the tie-ups from the other resources, which are long lead resources. And going forward, we are seeing that hydro pump storage, and nuclear, particularly, these three are the resources which will take a longer lead time. And we must see in that 10 years time horizon, then only we will be able to get the states tie up these capacity in that time horizons. Reliability standards, sir, we are following. We do have some standards, but not in terms of regulations. And I think the suggestions is well taken, and we'll try to see that we get reliability standards also formulated by CA. But right now we are following that LOLP and ENS, that is energy not served. But a formal regulations, I think that suggestions I have noted, and probably we'll be able to do that as well, sir. Transmission planning was another area which we have realized this, and we are also trying to have similar construct what we had promoted with respect to the resource adequacy planning, wherein we mandated it through the rules and then brought in guidelines. But we have not done that part, but we have started, ministry and CA together has taken a conscious call that we'll be doing this resource adequacy plans for transmission in the intrastate space as well. And this again, we'll be doing the joint studies. As a pilot, we have considered 6 states as of now, and we are doing that particular study. Based on the outcome of these, we'll try to formulate and we'll try to have the guidelines, and the, if required, can be mandated through the statute as well. So these are some of the things I thought, sir. I'll just
thank you
again
so
add
much.
on
Thank
to
you so much
whatever
for
I
your
had
response.
said.
Thank you,
Only one
Ghanshyam,
more
for your
thing.
response.
One more thing, sir, if you permitted, sir, that is the short-term demand forecast. Alokji is very right, sir, and we have faced this particular challenge, particularly when we knew that there are going to be crunch period during the last 2 years, and these periods do come in every year for around 20 days, 25 days, 30 days. And in spite of the fact that with all the whereabout with the load dispatch centers, NLDC could not give us the exact these dates, and even could not, we could not even coincide these months as well. So what to talk about the day and the hours, even the months, predicted months did not materialize. This is the bigger challenge that we are also facing, because we wanted to give some visibility to bring in gas based, which is already available to within the country, so that these gas based stations can also be revived, but we have not been able to do so so far. So these are challenges, sir. We'll try to address these challenges
Thank
as
you,
well,
Ghanshyam
and
ji.
hopefully we should do it. Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Mr. Soni, you have raised hands.
So thank you very much, sir. At the cost of repetition, commendable job by IEF, CA, and all the presenters and discussants. Sir, one of the FAQ which I have faced for a few decades as system operator, why are you not able to meet demand when your installed capacity is so much percentage high than the demand being met? And I'm very happy to see that now at least that realization has come. Sir, the whole world is struggling, not India, sir. Particularly with RE, only handling peak is not sufficient. That's more than enough. So there is nothing called perfect capacity. That is being now understood, sir. So I would come down to few very important points which were mentioned but are not getting the attention which they deserve. Number one, why was the term resource adequacy defined? It is not supply adequacy. It's a resource adequacy. And demand is a part of the equation, and much more needs to be done on demand response. I think we talk about it, but not as much as it deserves. We cannot keep on adding capacity. Otherwise, we really get into the issue of affordability, which was also mentioned, sir. So number two, next, I would say, sir, the stressed hours. So 5% demand, non-solar, solar, these are also methods, no doubt about it. But what we need to find out is the stressed hours. How do we define stressed hours? To my understanding, it's a depleting reserve. But then that requires monitoring of reserves. And there are nuances to reserve spinning, non-spinning, ramp limited reserves and other things. So that culture also we must give due importance that everybody declares what is the reserve and what kind of a reserve, every state and every region and at national level. So that's how this trust hours will begin. So the next point, which is more from economics, affordability, modeling point of view, is the marginal values. The culture of declaring marginal values and duration curves of the duals and the constraints which are binding are not there in the reports. And that doesn't give enough confidence in the reports. There are some numbers, but how did it arrive at it? So, sir, we must say that any study which is done must have marginals and their duration curves. Sir, I went through the 32 studies state by state, 25 to 28 pages each. Gujarat was the best one, but it's scary, sir. So resource adequacy reports available in public domain is really scary, sir. Particularly, let's say, take Goa. It is so much inadequate. Then where have we gone wrong? That needs a deeper understanding, sir. So, resource adequacy and planning, in my limited understanding, are related, but they're two different things, sir. So the reliability, affordability, and all those things get intertwined. But through resource adequacy, are we trying to say that we were not done planning correctly, or are we trying to do planning? So that's something which, if it can be clarified, would be very nice, sir. Sir, what type of capacity we need? That is the question, sir. Where seasonality, diurnality, and all those things which we discussed, but the exact type of capacity should come out, and that would take us to affordability, another thing. So the last point I would say is, sir, certainly we are not putting enough effort, and that's for quite some time. Number one, data, and number two, intrinsic capacity building. Sir, it takes time, sir. Even I am going around through states and simple optimization of SCED, there we are far, far behind. So we can come out with the reports, and that is not being done by those who are responsible for it. Someone else comes and does it. So that will not be causing sustainable. Pardon me for being very straightforward. And at this stage, I must be very candid in saying, sir, the kind of capacity building which we have, it's very, very difficult to carry forward this, and we must put serious effort in this. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Soni. I think we have already overshot the time, so no time for the additional questions now. May I now request Mr. R.V. Shahi for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Rakesh. It has been one of the most absorbing webinars, a lot of discussions. Senior most people from the government side, they worked earlier. And Ghanshyam's presence has been 100%. And Ghanshyam made his inaugural remarks, and then in the end also he has responded to most of the questions. I think we were discussing two things in this. One was this guideline for the resource adequacy. And in the manner of this issue, all the issues came which go toward the short, medium, and long-term planning. So both the things have been covered in not only on generation side, but also on the transmission side. All the presentations were very extensive. R.P. Singh's presentations very scholastic type, very research-oriented, and brought out a number of issues which we have been discussing with doubts, with greater degree of clarity, those things emerged. And one of the things that emerged is that our emphasis on RE must also be considered in the light of the variable load and what cost it brings. So he brought out certain examples, 2 examples of United States, of one area and another area, Texas and the other one, I think some other place, that how a higher content in a shorter time of RE does have an impact of unbalancing some of the things, particularly from the point of view of cost. We had the comments from Balwant, we had the comment from Chintan, and we had also wonderful comment from Alok Kumar. One thing has become very clear, that the guidelines for resource adequacy has implementational challenges. Objective is very biased, but implementational challenges, particularly from the point of view of DISCOMs being entrusted with this responsibility, and also some penal actions in the sense they can be fined or etc., in the time frame that we are talking. And whether everything of demand belongs to DISCOM to discover, those were the issues, some of the issues I also brought out, others have brought out. So I think, however pious the objective of this particular guideline may be, you have implementational challenges. So therefore, deferment of any penal provision in terms of fine, and also revisiting some of the expectations that have come into the implementation of this. So obviously, today's session was on the resource adequacy guideline, but this discussion obviously has overemphasized, and rightly overemphasized, on the overall short and long-term planning process. To my mind, National Electricity Plan, as prescribed in the Electricity Act, itself is good enough. Whether resource adequacy guideline and rule was required, one has to see. See, Central Electricity Authority is a statutory body, and the National Electricity Plan is an obligation of the Act. To meet that obligation, what process they follow, it will be a long process. Like I said, that this is one of the processes that we are asking DISCOMs to give us some data. Other processes will have to be interactions with industry, interaction with various ministries, etc. So that is there. So I think definitely certain degree of revisiting of the implementational aspects and therefore procedural aspects of this will be necessary. Good that Ghanshyam has already clarified many of the points. Very good that he says that this is the first cut or second cut of the projection. A point was made, and RP also supported, others also supported, that with the projection that we are saying, we are still remaining in the range of 4,000 kilowatt hour per year. Because megawatt is one thing, and megawatt hour or kilowatt hour is another thing. So if the proportion changes in favor of RE being on the higher side, you are not getting the same amount of electricity. The finally per capita consumption will not go by megawatt. Per capita consumption will go by what you generate and what you supply. Electricity is needed for consumption, for the business, for the industry, etc. So therefore, since this process is an ongoing process, a dynamic process, even though it is a projection up to 2050, now Ghanshyam clarified that a new dimension has come on account of emphasis on nuclear. Obviously, it will change. Certain other thing will come. Some new technology will come. So, one suggestion that is very clear, that India has to plan by 2047 or 2050 a per capita consumption which is much more than can be provided by the present formulation. So this needs to be revisited. I overemphasize that point. RP has also suggested, others have also suggested. Because unless we create a supply line on the higher side, I don't think we will be ever be able to among the developed nation of the world. Prime Minister has said we need to be developed nation. To be developed nation, this is one of the important criteria. So I think this program has been, this seminar has been very, very enriching, very, very educative. All of us have learned, all of us have gone to the stage that we can appreciate the points made by others. some of the dimensional changes, directional changes that are taking place. We heard from Central Electricity Authority. We have people from nuclear side. I see Mr. Grover. He knows that how much we have been trying for nuclear to receive a respectable position in our overall planning on energy. And it is a music to the ear to all that now the government has recognized that there will be other organizations beyond Nuclear Power Corporation that will be handling this, and the type of expansion that we are now anticipating at the thinking stage is enormous, because that is also a carbon-free power. I think this program, I am grateful to all of you on behalf of the India Energy Forum that you have made this program and you have contributed this program in a manner that we are all wiser. And I think we are moving on the right direction. We have a Central City Authority chairman who is quite sensitive to the suggestions that are made. He's quite sincere about considering them. And so is the Secretary Power in the government, or so is the Minister in the government. I think we should definitely contribute toward resetting the thought process that goes on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shai Saab. I now request Mr. BP Singh to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. At the outset, let me thank Mr. Shai, Chairman, India Energy Forum, for giving a different perspective to the resource adequacy as compared to what the background note was circulated by us. And definitely that widened the scope of discussion. So thank you very much, sir, for giving a different perspective to the whole discussion. I'm also thankful to Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, who has been working very hard and very actively on this total system of planning for resource adequacy and developing a system and mechanism, and including the guidelines and regulations, and his approach for accepting new suggestions and dovetailing into the system and making the system more and more dynamic. So thank you very much, sir. Shri R.P. Singh sir, former chairperson UPRC, has really given a insight of what is happening across the globe and where we stand and what we need to do than what is being done. And he highlighted many of the issues, including the transfer of what happens if we change from coal to renewable, the loss of job and growth opportunities. So he brought out some other different perspective to the when we are changing more and more to RE. So even that needs a consideration. And he also highlighted that the availability of land for RE generation and the potential what is predicted and the actual capacity addition what is being predicted, that the mismatch, so that needs a vision. Thank you very much, sir, pointing out these issues. And then you also said about the granular and generation data and compilation of same and making it dynamic. So thanks a lot for your suggestion, sir. Chintan Shah, he gave the industry perspective and from the new power side, and he definitely brought out what are the challenges and what needs to be done. So thank you very much for the different issues which you raised, which we have noted down. Shri Balwant Joshi ji, he gave the different perspective and also said what are the kind of challenges which we are going to face and we are facing and what needs to be done to be settling those issues. Thank you very much for your suggestion. Lastly, Shri Alok Kumar ji, he also made a lot of points, and especially on the adoption of policies which has been implemented or notified by the government about the national smart grid, and then the data templates to be standardized, and shorter demand forecasting, all those issues he raised, and which were subsequently ably responded by Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, that these all aspects will be taken into consideration while reworking onto the formula and the models which they are working on. Mr. Shuni also made very good points which are really helpful, will be helpful in our resource planning, total system standardization. So thanks to all the speakers and the participants who have really actively participated And thanks to all, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rakesh Nath ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. We close this now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.